Okay, right. We'll just give it a second, guys, and then we will crack on. Let's get ourselves very comfortable, and then we can get into this, can't we? Got the stream set up. We've got recording happening. We've done a last-minute promo tweet. Got my heater on as well. Fuck me, it's cold today. I'm just praying that as I'm doing this show, you guys can't hear like the workmen are going on outside cutting some sort of like material or tiles or metal or something. I don't know. It's making a right fucking racket out there. Anyway, let's just give me 20 seconds and then we're going to start the show for those of you, like for the early birds among you. Also, before we start this proper, before we really get into this, I'll just say, if you are if you're watching on the live stream, don't be shy. Jump in the chat. If I've got time, if it's not too hectic or I don't feel too, frantic and frenetic, I'll jump in there for a little bit of Q&A or something in a bit. So okay, right. Well, it's 1 minute past 12. I suppose I should consider starting on time for once, shouldn't I? Here we go. Ba-ba-ba-ba-dow. Ladies and gents, welcome back to Thompsin and Other Disappointments. God, it feels like I've been off for fucking ages. I only held back for a week. Was it just over a week? I feel like oddly refreshed and renewed here, though. I mean, it could be the coffee. Could be that. Could be that the missus is away for a week as well. Could be that playing some sort of part in this. Like, do you ever get that? Do you ever get like where your girlfriend or your wife or your husband, could be true if you reverse the genders too, I'm sure. But do you ever get it where your partner goes away for a week, but it feels like a holiday to you as well? Like I love my girlfriend. Like, she's the mother of my children. She's lovely. We live together and it's great and good and all of the other words that people say when they're trying to convince their listeners that they're not being hugely disrespectful to their other half. But I do. Like, I love her to bits. She's great. But also, it is nice to get a break from each other sometimes, And when she goes away for a week with her mate, with her BFF, I don't know, like I have to say, like, it has felt like a mini holiday for me over here as well. I mean, that is probably more indicative of how, full on it gets when you're together and you got kids and you're living in each other's pockets. And so, like, rarely do you get a night off with the near total absence of family support, of people to step in and go, oh, hey, guys, I thought you might like get a night or a weekend to get away together, to a B&B and just enjoy being a couple again. That is just fantasy for us. We just don't get that. So the next best thing is like, well, you have a week off, love. I'll hold back here with the kids. Or reciprocally, where she agrees to look after the kids on a weekend so I go and watch a Nirvana covers band in Camden or whatever. Anyway, look, I guess what I'm saying is I feel a bit better this week for having had a sort of slightly warped week off. But also, I may as well get into this. I, sort of can't be bothered keeping my cards close to my chest. We'll get onto the news and everything else in a second. But let me just clarify why I've not been posting episodes of the podcast for the last week or or 10 days or whatever it's been. So I don't know how many of you listen to this because you found me organically. You know, maybe I just popped up on the Apple Podcast recommendations, or maybe you saw one tweet like one time, but you don't see all of my TikTok or Twitter stuff. So you might not be aware, but I've had this voice crack thing for about 3 months now. And it's sort of played on my mind, but I haven't paid it too much attention. I've just been like, oh, it's kind of weird that my voice is cracked. It's got a bit shriller at times, and then at other times it will go super deep, like real, like bass to it. Barry White syndrome. And anyway, I was, I haven't paid it too much mind, as it were. But I was playing with my kids the other week, and I laughed while we were messing around down by this lake near to us, and it kind of did it again. Like it's sort of like the way that I describe it is like imagine the audio of your voice box, right? Imagine the audio like a sort of a sound wave. Imagine it as a spectrum, right? And down here down the bottom is where you've got the bass of your voice, right? And then up here's where you've got the treble, okay? Like, so bass and treble, and it's spread fairly evenly for most people. That's just the sound of your voice. All of these different frequencies work together, right? And so this voice crack thing, I don't know when it happened, but at some point it began to feel like someone had taken a chunk out of the middle of that sound wave, And so now if my voice tries to use that part of it, like that pitch or tone where that bit used to be, it sort of trips out and it goes straight to the high bit. So like when I laugh, it sounds really scratchy now, to me at least. And so anyway, like I'll try and keep this brief because honestly, it's really not that interesting. But basically, it dawned on me that this has been like this now for about 3 months, maybe longer. And so I did that thing that you're never supposed to do, like where you Google your symptoms and, it always ends up somewhere really fucking bad. Like, it's never like, oh, yeah, these are my symptoms. Oh, okay. Oh, apparently it's going to wear off in like 2 days. It's never good news when you Google your symptoms. And anyway, it said, voice crack over here. And then I scanned down a bit and it was like laryngitis over there. And then it was like, well, what happens if the laryngitis doesn't go away after 2 weeks? And it was like, well, then it could be chronic laryngitis. And, then I scan a bit further down. It's like, well, what if that doesn't go away? And then boom, there it was. Laryngeal throat cancer. So I'm like, yeah, party time. Now we're talking. So then, like, having the mentality that I do, being so sort of, undiagnosed ADHD about it, I then, of course, start spiraling, just obsessing over it. And I booked an appointment with the GP, and then there's blood tests, and now I've got this exam with a consultant next week, and the fucked up thing is, like, it's been 2 weeks or so now, and I still have no information whatsoever about it, about what it could be, about what the test results showed. Like, I'm sort of thinking by this point, from the conversations that I've had with my doctor, that it's probably not throat cancer, right? Like, I'm low risk for that. I don't have a lump anywhere. I haven't, like, woken up in the night with night sweats or anything, which is apparently a symptom of it. I don't smoke. Like, everyone that I've spoken to so far seems to think I've just, blasted my voice box out because I spend so much time doing podcasts and stand-up and the punk politics videos, which are basically stand-up again. And I project when I talk, right? But it's just this feeling, like, in the back of my mind, it's just like, this thing hasn't fucking gone away for like 3 months. Like, what the fuck has happened here? And it's so visceral to me because we have a good friend close to us. And like, when we first moved here, my son went to the same school as this lady, this couple around the corner, her son. And we met her husband, and it's a fucking horror story. Like, I don't know if I've ever talked about this before. I really don't think I have, but he was one of these stories that was like, he felt something was wrong with him, and he went to the doctors, and they were like, oh, we can't find anything wrong. And they did loads of tests, and nothing came back, and then he got better, and he was like, oh, that was weird. Must have been some sort of long drawn out fever. And then he deteriorated again, not long after we met him. Like, he was okay for a bit. And he started deteriorating again. And they took him back into hospital. And they were like, okay, well, we're going to take a look inside. So they opened him up. And he was just fucking infested with cancer. And he was dead 3 months later. Just game over. And now, he's left behind his wife, his widow. And we know her really well now. And she's got these 2 boys, and it's such a fucking sad story. And so obviously, I suppose what I'm saying really by bringing that up is that it's so visceral for me. It's so real that it could be as bad as that when something like this comes up, it really does resonate with me in a way that maybe it wouldn't with other people. Do you know what I mean? And so anyway, look, they'll end up scanning me or something and running a load of tests and giving me results to the bloods and all that stuff. And they'll probably end up bollocking me. They'll probably be like, you fucking idiot, Mr. Thompson. There's actual sick people here, desperate for one of these scans. And you took up a blood test, a tube camera, a private consultant examination. And for what? Because your voice sounded a bit funny. What the fuck is wrong with you? So, yeah, like, I'm fully prepared to be bollocked like that by my GP. But it's just that, as I say, this thing hasn't gone away. Or at least it hadn't got better. Hadn't in 3 months. And I just kept, looking at my kids and thinking about how, if it were the worst case scenario, that I wouldn't be here for them, and I couldn't walk my daughter down the aisle, and the advice that I wouldn't be able to give them, and what sort of state I would leave my girlfriend in, and what our finance, I was thinking about the worst possible outcome. And it just really fucking got to me. I was like, I just need to check out of like beer and straining my voice and all the rest of it. And then talk to a GP and, take care of myself for a week or two while I sort of work out whatever this is. So that is all in progress. And do you know what? Because I haven't been doing this for a bit, because I've been holding off on the beer, not because I think, the beer is trashing my voice box or anything, but just because, as I understand it, it could be a factor, alcohol and so on. But, like, because I've been holding back on the beer and so on, I've noticed that there's, like, everything's, like, a little bit less scratchy, and there is that, like, the treble is coming back. And it's not fully there, but it does feel like things are moving in the right direction. So, I don't know. That's where I've been anyway, just in case you were wondering. I don't want to spend the whole episode going on about my fucking health problems anyway, for fuck's sake. Like, I'll end up with a podcast that's just like, listening to your uncle's blood pressure and back problems or some shit for fucking 45 minutes. Who wants that? So, let's get into this, shall we? What's been going on in the world? What's been happening in the last 10 days? Any earth-shaking events take place in the last couple of weeks? Anyone think of any big news stories that have shifted the tectonic plates of what we all thought was the world status quo? No? Yes? Oh, yes, of course. Of course. God, yes. Gigantic story. Really concerning. With reverberations going on still all the time now. And, basically while I was off, worrying about my voice box, of course, the biggest story to emerge, quite concerningly, shaking all of us to the core, was the Jada Pinkett Smith revelation. No, of course not. It's Israel Gaza. Just a total fucking mess of a situation, isn't it? Going on out there. And I don't want to get too deep into it because, honestly, it's so fucking depressing, isn't it? And I feel like you guys know what's going on out there, and I know what's going on out there, and, anyone who possesses any empathy or shame or intelligence, they should know how bloody and unjust and unfair and heartbreaking it all is. To see that all play out in real time is just, and to hear the stories that are coming out of there is just, But this is the thing, like, truly, I would like to keep this show a little bit upbeat and like snarky, if at all possible. For it to be the light in your darkness. And that is just completely impossible with that story, with that subject. There's just no funny in that situation, I don't think. It just brings out the worst in everyone. The protests, the protesters who had hang glider emblems on their jackets at the weekend. And like the response to that by the Daily Mail, who were like, why didn't the police arrest those girls? They should arrest them and throw them in prison for their offensive emblems. Why didn't they arrest? Because it's an item of clothing, you fucking idiots. And the prisons are full. I don't know if you heard. You understand? Prisons are over capacity right now. And they are seriously talking about not jailing rapists and violent offenders because there's nowhere to put them. Why didn't the police just arrest those girls? Where do you want to put them? Where? Some mythical, magical prison just over the horizon. Just next to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Asylum seekers? Oh, absolutely. We can find somewhere for you. There you go. 2 tickets to the Bibby Stockholm. And a complimentary pack of Great British Imodium. On the off chance that you get Legionnaires while you're on there. Refugees? Sure. We can find somewhere to put you motherfuckers. But prisoners? Violent prisoners? Well, I'm sorry, lads. There's just no room at the inn for you guys. So be on your way, I guess. And then meanwhile, the Mail are like, I don't care where you put them. Just arrest these bitches for their emblems, their offensive emblems. Their emblems take priority over actual violent offenders. How about that shit? That's how deep the hate runs. Tories would rather they were walking down the high street, weaving and dodging bank robberies and violent assaults, as long as they don't have to see a brown person wearing a distasteful hang glider drawing on the back of their jacket. They're like, no, that's where I draw the line, I'm afraid. Like, I was saying this on a Punk Politics video the other day, like, why is it that when the asylum seeker centres are full, then they're like, oh yeah, no, we can absolutely find £30 million to fund travel lodge bookings and premier inns and floating plague barges. Overflow car parks maybe next. But when the prisons are full, they're like, oh, I wish there was something I could do. It's just nothing. I've really thought about it, and I can't think of any solutions whatsoever. Well, couldn't you put these guys on a barge too? Well, I don't know if that would be. I don't think that would be appropriate. I mean, we don't have too many barges, so right. But I mean, if there's only one barge, shouldn't you be, prioritizing the public safety? Well, exactly. I mean, we don't know where these fake refugees come from, do we? So we're protecting the public by keeping them locked up. Well, okay, but given the majority of asylum claims are found to be legit, and given, in theory at least, 100% of criminals are actually criminals, don't you think, if you were claiming to be protecting the public, you should probably stuff the boat full of convicts first? Like, there's something in that, isn't there? Like, you want to keep all the asylum seekers on the plague barge on the basis they might be baddies over the legal and scientific certainty that these other people are actually baddies. Like, it's fucking mad. Sorry, Ed. No, I do not like filthy, scrounging asylum seekers. That's all this comes down to. And I like being cruel to them. That's what it is, you know. And I'll tell you what, if letting a few rapists and violent assault types, you know, robbers and thieves out, you know, if it let them out, if that lets me carry on oppressing these poor motherfuckers, then that is a price I'm willing to pay. You know, it's like that. That is the exchange, the transaction that is going on here. Make an orderly line of refugees over here, and yes, and then get the robbers, the thieves off the boat now. Thank you. Fucking, you know, Baroness Moan pops her head round the corner. Did somebody say thieves on the boat? Lol. Okay, anyway. Where were we? So just quickly, I think, you know, the latest developments with all of this, and as I say, you know, I'm not going to go too deep into this because it's just dark. But like the latest developments on the news this morning were that Rishi Sunak is planning to fly to Israel on Thursday. So that's something. I'm not entirely sure why. Why is Rishi Sunak flying to Israel? Like, what the fuck is he going to do while he's out there? You know, like, what? Why is he going to Israel? Like, what is he going to offer? How is he going to contribute to this? He's going to touch down with his private plane, and he's going to walk out those, you know, drive-up truck stairs that they do for aeroplanes, and he's going to get chauffeured to the festival site where it all went down, and then they're going to wheel him out in front of a podium, you know, with a little shoebox thing to stand on, realistically, and then he's going to clear his throat, hopefully with no voice crack, and he's going to say this. He's going to say this to all the devastated faces of Israel, all the Brits out there who came to hear him channel their fury, their want for revenge, but also for peace. They're going to gather round, and Sunak's going to step up to the podium, and he's going to clear his throat, and he's going to say this. He's going to go, yeah. Hold your nerve. And then he gets back on his plane and he flies home to the brand new fucking basement swimming pool that he's just had fitted. That is the extent of what he is able to offer here. He's a fucking empathy bin. He doesn't give a fuck. And why does anyone give a fuck about him either? Like what he thinks or what he's going to say, you know? Like having Sunak turn up to a geopolitical crisis right now, that must be like having your terminally ill mother-in-law weigh in on the 2025 family holiday conversation. You know, like oh, no, thanks for your input, Janet. Thank you. Yeah, but maybe you should stick to short-term goals for a bit, you know? Like, Sunak's going to be gone in the next few months. Everyone must know that, right? Why the fuck would you listen to what he's saying? Or what he can or cannot commit to? When there's such a huge likelihood that he'll be turfed out before, Starmer steps in and decides whether to go ahead with his initiatives or his commitments. Like, if I was Netanyahu, man, and someone introduced me to Sunak, you know, like yeah, this is the British Prime Minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak. Oh right, yeah, no, nice to meet you, yeah. But like once the pleasantries were out the way, I think I'd be like, listen, I'm sure you're a lovely bloke, I'm sure you are, but I just don't see the point of making friends with someone in their notice period. You know, like it's like going for coffee breaks and Thursday night city drinks with fucking Ron from sales, you know, but you know that he's leaving in 8 weeks. Like, why would you bother? I'm going to make a temporary friend. Oh, fucking amazing. So that's the latest on that one. And of course we have James Cleverly, Foreign Secretary, standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel, unequivocally behind Israel. They got a right to defend themselves and all that. So that's nice. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel, says Cleverly. Nice little luxury for Cleverly there, if I do say so, to be able to stand on the world stage and pretend he's a nice man for 5 minutes. A nice luxury that we're all going to have to pay the balance on at some point. And by that I mean, by standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel while they indiscriminately bomb hospitals and schools and level Gaza, and, you know, by putting us all in the frame with it, you're making us a target for future terrorists. So thank you very much for that. You know, right now, this is. I know it's getting dark, but let me just get this out. Right now, imagine this, right? There is a 15-year-old girl somewhere in Croydon or Portsmouth or Manchester or so, you know, wherever. There's a 15-year-old girl right now here on the 18th of October, 2023. And she's just going about her day. She's just dreaming of working in fashion, studying, drawing, and she's got her whole life ahead of her. Her family love her, and her mates and she are like, they're always talking about what their lives are going to be like at university, and then the internships that will follow afterwards, and so on, right? And neither she nor her family or any of her friends have any idea that in 5 years' time, all of that will come to an end because some Islamist terror cell, all radicalized by being starved and seeing their family members die in front of them now, this week, someone in that little sect or family or extended family is going to drive a van full of explosives into her tube station and blow her to pieces. Like, it's weird to think that, isn't it? Like, right now, that person or those people are all still alive. And it doesn't have to be that way. But our political grandstanding, our arrogance as a geopolitical entity is basically putting us in a future position where something like that will almost certainly happen. And I'm sure, like, you know, then again, we'll have story after story pretending these people were just, you know, what, fucking feeble-minded or easily led, and they were radicalized by a hook-handed guy in a dodgy mosque, you know, rather than the uncomfortable truth. In this instance, you know, I mean, look, I'm sure that some of that easily led, hook-handed stuff has happened. You know, I'm not discounted that sort of stuff can take place. But in this instance, it will basically boil down to the fact that we looked the other way. We celebrated Israel in their state-sponsored murder and displacement and starvation and so on, while their siblings and children died. God, it's also dark, isn't it? See, this is why I didn't want to get into this. Let's try and keep it light. Let's try and move on. You know, you got to try and keep these shows light. You got to, because the joyless, depressive, hopeless mind state is precisely the sort of mindset that the Conservatives want us to stay in, isn't it? It's like, you know, things can't be better, so you may as well stick with us, you fucking plebs. Like, that is basically their go-to market campaign now, I feel. Oh, Labour say that they're going to build 300,000 houses. Well, that's what we said, so you may as well stick with us. Yeah, but the difference is, mate, they might actually try and do it. How about that? You may as well stick with us, you fucking idiots. I know we bang on about how this is the greatest country in the world and everything, but also, miraculously, no, things couldn't possibly better. This is the best that we could do. But I thought that you said that we were the best. We are. We're the greatest country in the world. Right, okay, so why can't we have cheap rail and schools that aren't crumbling? We can never have that. We're just too shit. Right, okay. It's that great Tory paradox. Just accept it, guys. Things are shit. Joy is dead. Hope is gone. And you know that's their whole thing, by the way. And I'll tell you why. Because something as harmless as laughing gas is about to be criminalised as of 8th of November. Like, absolutely no joy is permitted anymore. No laughing. But it's harmless. I mean, it's literally just joy. I don't give a fuck. Get rid of it. Ban it. 2 years in jail. if you can find a place. Like, they're such fucking sociopaths, aren't they? That if they're within a 500-meter radius of any sort of positive emotion, they break out in hives like fucking Damien at Guildford Cathedral. What else is going on out there? What else is in the news at the moment? What else has been dragged kicking and screaming into my political and journalistic periphery? Greg Hands, a friend of the podcast, or if not the podcast, the Punk Politics videos. Greg Bloody Hands. What a gem that guy is. Just the most lowbrow, base level, Brit flick portrayal of a game show host you could ever imagine. Like, if someone was casting a cheesy game show host, you know, in a low-budget Danny Dyer thing, you know, like they blew all the actual budget getting one of the periphery cast members from Lockstock to agree to be in it, to say like 3 lines in it. That's it. They've blown all the money on that. Now all they've got left is just, you know, local Amdram types to audition to play all of the other roles. And there's a scene where, I don't know, Channel 5 of the 1990s is doing a game show. Greg Hands would be a shoo-in for that. The only reason he wouldn't get that role would be if he was worried that he was going to be typecast. It's literally the only reason. Or, you know, if he was, you know, too busy to be on set. Too busy running around showing people his note. His stupid fucking note that he posts every day and brings to speeches. Anyway, look. CCHQ's Greg Hands is, he's head of political campaigning for the Conservatives. At least for the moment. I can't see him lasting much longer. I'm going to be real with you. because look at the polls, man. I mean, I know that the Tories are shit at grading whether metrics are a success or, you know, not. Like, when it's something that doesn't affect them, then they don't really give a fuck about metrics, right? Then they'll say stuff like, we aim to create 5,000 more hospital beds. And then they somehow end up, you know, fucking up and reducing the number by 3,000. And then they're like, oh, well, it could have been worse. It would have been worse under Labour. Keep up that there, but we'll put you on the plague march, you filthy, gargling pother. Like, that's usually how they handle metrics. But when the metrics suggest it's something that does affect them, like Greg Hands, like the stats for Greg fucking Hands, like, I don't know, I would assume that they would take action. Like, this is a guy who, so he's currently responsible for CCHQ, for Conservative campaigning, right? And this is a guy who oversaw the mayoral campaign of Sean Bailey, who failed to get elected in London, the London mayor, right? That was Greg Hands' campaign. Also, who's since becoming Conservative chair and looking after CCHQ. He took that job in January of this year. So since then, I looked at it earlier, Sunak's popularity, his rating, his favourability has collapsed by 50%. So fucking great job, Greg. Great job, Greg. Have a cookie. What else has happened in Greg Hands' tenure as head of Conservative campaigning? He's seen absolutely no improvement on the voting intention poll whatsoever. So for all of his initiatives, all of his note printing and his Keir Starmer flip-flops and his god-awful speech, all of that shit. Not to mention the fake newspapers that were rolled out around the southeast, pretending to be real newspapers so that they could funnel out their propaganda. All of that stuff, all of these different tactics and strategies, all of it has amounted to fuck all. Great job, Greg. Like, in what? In what fucked up political world do you have to live in to look at the performance of this guy and go, yep, steady as she goes, Greg. Keep on doing what you're doing there, lads. Anyway, Greg Hands. In another fantastic return to form for the guy, an internal memo by Greg Hands appears to have leaked out, or from his office at least. This was on Sky News this morning. Excuse me. It says, leaked Tory memo predicts double by-election defeat, blaming enormous discontent on Nadine Dorries. Whoa! Poor Nads. She's going to cop the blame for this, is she? Christ. So this is, in essence, it's a story about two by-elections, right? Which you may or may not have been aware are taking place this week. There's Tamworth and then there's Mid-Beds. Tamworth was Chris Pincher, who was forced to resign in shame for allegations or in conjunction with the allegations that he had sexually assaulted somebody. And then Boris Johnson kind of knew about it, and that's what did for Boris Johnson. And then Nadine Dorries was forced to resign after she said she was resigning, right? And then she refused to resign or something. So it's a story about two by-elections. And Tamworth, which was previously a Tory stronghold with a 20% swing, is now polling neck and neck with Labour. That's Tamworth. And then Mid-Bedfordshire, Dorries' constituency, is, I think that's a bit more comfortable for them. Anyway, look, this memo, I'll read out a bit of it. I'll take a look at it with you. Here we go. It says, and this has been leaked from Greg Hands' office in CCHQ. It says, the vote share for the Conservatives could halve to around 30%, and that the delay in Nadine Dorries actually resigning has caused enormous discontent. Right. Which, if we just spool back a little bit, right? So you remember she threw a tantrum because she was named in Johnson's honours list, but the protocol for that is that you have to resign from being an MP first. So she panicked and resigned, but then she was nuked from the list on technicalities or something. I can't really remember now, but anyway, the end game of it was that she couldn't ascend to the Lords, right? I think I'm remembering that right. And so then it was like, well, I'm not just resigning for nothing. So she just clung on, not speaking in Parliament, not representing her constituents, not really functioning as an MP, but still pulling that salary down. Got to keep bringing in that precious loot. And so anyway, that has caused some friction, apparently, between the Conservative Party and their faithful voters. And it says, like, here's some context to it for you. Here's the numbers. Here comes the science bit. They said they think they'll get about 30% vote share, with Labour about 8 points behind. So they may cling on to the seat. That's for Mid-Bedfordshire. In Tamworth, which they're also projected to maybe just about cling on to, neck and neck, the memo suggests that they're incredibly nervy about both. I mean, look, if they do cling on to either or both of them, prepare yourselves, dear listeners, for an absolute shit cloud of nonsense about it being some barnstorming victory. God, it's going to be insufferable. It's going to be stuff like, voters have roundly rejected Labour's extreme green agenda. Just like they did in Uxbridge. While the rest of us with an IQ above 17 will be like, it's a Tory safe seat, right? And you barely clung onto it. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Voters have roundly rejected Labour's extreme green woke agenda. Get the fuck out of my face with that nonsense. Anyway, so here's where it gets juicy, guys, because Sky News are saying that this memo that's leaked out from Greg Hands' office, it says, the memo also suggests the party is preparing to blame Ms. Dorries and Mr. Pincher personally in the event they lose either seat. like, I know I've said this before, but it's amazing how quickly they go sociopathic on each other, like rats in a sack, isn't it? Like, it's always someone else's fault. They never back each other up when it turns out that relationship could be detrimental. There's no honour among thieves. It's not voters staying home because they can't be asked to support your corrupt, lying party and your failing campaign strategy, Greg. Great job, Greg. It's just this, abysmal campaign genius that you've got leading both campaigns. I mean, it could be that, couldn't it? Do we think? But no. It must just be coincidentally the personal, highly coincidental nature of candidates or legacy MPs. They're just the source of the discontent, aren't they? They're just ad hoc, random occurrences. It must be that. It's like shifting the blame, to the candidate themselves, to the MP themselves, and then ostracizing them. Just this brutal rejection of people you probably sat and had lunch with in the Carlton Club or in the parliamentary restaurant. It's just fucking brutal, isn't it? These people are disgusting. So, yeah. The memo also suggests the party is preparing to blame Ms. Dorries and Mr. Pincher personally in the event they lose either seat. It goes on. The memo says, we've always known the cause of these by-elections, i.e. MPs associated with our party's challenges last year. They mean Partygate and lying to Parliament and lying about sex offenders and the rest of it. Anyway, party's challenges last year. And these MPs standing down who are personally associated with negative news stories. That we've always known that they would hinder our performance, it says, as was the case in Selby and Somerton and Frome. The data and doorstep feedback proves this to be the case. It says, many former Conservative voters say they like the new candidate once they find out about his record as police and crime commissioner and his determination to do an effective job as their local MP. Many voters still raise Nadine Dorries and her record on the doorstep, though, unprompted. Interesting. As was found to be the case in the post-election research carried out after the Selby by-election regarding Nigel Adams. Many voters clearly associate Nadine Dorries and Chris Pincher with the party's difficulties last year. Like they're tainted, basically. And here's the thing, right? I don't want to labour the point. But here's the thing, right? If it's this MP that's the problem, and then that MP who's also a problem, and then, I don't know, Peter Bone, who's now suspended for allegedly throwing his dick around, by all accounts. Whatever it is, some sort of sexual, expose-y thing is what he's alleged to be. I'm sure he denies the allegations. Quickly throw that in there. End up coming out of my consultation cancer-free, but having lost my house, so I want to avoid that. No point swapping one sad story for another one, is there? It's not the party that's the problem, is it, guys? It's not the party that's the problem. It's just Peter Bone that's done it. It's just Nadine Dorries who's done that. It's not the party that's the problem. It's David Warburton taking pictures of himself with a suspicious white powder and being accused of climbing into bed with a 20-year-old intern or whatever the fuck that was. It's not the party that's the problem. It's the tractor porn guy. Just, sat there. This is a bad apple in Houses of Parliament, House of Commons row, just sat there watching tractor porn. So it's not the branding. They're fine with the branding, guys. With the blue, with the name Conservative Party. Honestly, it's not the party that's the problem here, Greg. It's just that Hancock dispatched COVID to their parents' care home like the shit was fucking Uber Eats and half of the residents snuffed it. But it's not the party that's the problem. It's just a few bad apples, Greg. Like, at what point? What would it take for these voters, or for the great campaigning genius that is Greg Hands, to go, hang on a second. Hang on, brainwave, guys. Just bear with me while I try to articulate this. Hang on. If we take all these people, these MPs and dodgy candidates, I don't know if you guys saw, there's a story that broke late last night, I think, this morning, like one of the candidates for one of these by-elections, there's like a picture of a diagram where it's like a sort of flow chart where he's telling poor people who can't afford to feed their children to fuck off. Here's another one, right? Anyway, what would it take for Greg Hands to go, hang on a second, if we take all these people, these MPs, these candidates, and various, conduits for shame that we keep putting into these jobs, what if we just panned out and, oh my God, It actually is the party. That is the party. But they would never do that. That would require way too much introspection and sort of, macro visibility and self-awareness. Wouldn't it be way too depressing, too crushing for them to have to actually look at themselves in that way? Way, way too depressing for you, Greg. But I mean, things are already looking a bit bleak, aren't they? So, the economy's in the toilet, problems in the Middle East, cost of living crisis, NHS collapsing, pension deficit. Things are already looking somewhat dark. So why not at least consider it while knocking back a few of these laughing gas canisters? Do it while you still can, Greg, before you make them illegal in a fortnight, you mad bastard. Guys, that's it. I'll be back this Friday night for the guest show, if I can find a guest. Better start sending out messages in the various chat groups that I'm in. Do check out the Punk Politics videos on YouTube if you get a second. Massive love to the Patreons. All of my tiers, my £3 tiers, my £5 tiers, and indeed my £10 tiers, my God tiers. If you are keen on joining the Patreon, it's at patreon.com/Aid Thompsin with an IN on the end. You get access to the Discord chat. I'm in there most days. We talk shit about politics. We talk about upcoming events. We share political memes, all of that stuff. I also put a link to any upcoming shows. I give sort of a heads up to the Patreons for those tickets before anyone else, so that if it sells out, then they've got first dibs. I also do London meetups, London-based meetups. So if you are in or around the home counties and you fancy coming along, we usually meet up somewhere near Brick Lane, have a few drinks, talk politics, have a bit of a laugh. What else is there? Oh, yeah, no, you get an RSS feed. So you could get episodes of the podcast 2 days before everybody else, before the mere heathens of Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That's it from me. I'm going to have to go. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back on Friday night. Until then, I'm out of here like a mofo.